Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and François.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send podcast. I'm excited to talk to you with François. How are you doing, François? You're back on the show.
Very good. Yeah. Hi, Roel. Yeah, I'm happy to be back with you and recording a new episode with you. Feels good.
Yeah, I know. It feels like it's been a while because even the last episode, all I did was kind of share a recording I did. I know you and I have both been very busy with things outside of the podcast. You with work and travel, and then me just with a lot of work to do and family things, and had a couple of birthdays here in the family, so just trying to keep that balance of work-life balance, and things have been pretty hectic around here. How about you?
Yeah, me too. A lot of traveling, a lot of work. I remember the last episode I recorded, I was in a hotel. I recorded the one on AP on a stick. So yeah, it feels good to be back on the show with you and just exchanging and talking about Wi-Fi.
Yeah, for sure. And again, you're still recording in a hotel, right?
Yeah. Actually, this time in Airbnb.
Okay, so slightly nicer.
Yeah, they're actually redoing the roof as we speak. So if you guys hear some stuff happening in the background, it's not too serious.
All right, yeah, so you got some work going on in the background. I'll just be sipping some coffee because it's pretty early for me. You're in a different country. You're in France, I think?
Yeah, I'm in France, so I'm a little bit ahead of time.
All right, yeah, I just woke up like 30 minutes ago.
I guess it's still the same day, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get started in this episode. We're going to talk about conference Wi-Fi. You're fresh off of a recent conference you were providing assistance for with Wi-Fi and other parts. But before we get to that, we do have a couple of news, right? I guess the first one, I'll talk about this since I was the one that was part of it. I recorded a video with David Bombal on his YouTube channel about Wi-Fi 6. And David was with us when we did the Just the Tech event over at Cisco. And so he invited me over to talk about Wi-Fi 6 to his audience. And his audience, they're like CCNA level type folks who are studying for their certification, and maybe they're not particularly experts on Wi-Fi. So I try to provide my knowledge and what I know based on all the episodes we did, François, on Wi-Fi 6. So hopefully that video translated well to those people and also for you guys. So we'll add a link over to the show notes over at cleartosend.net/172 if you want to see that video, and also all the other links that we'll talk about on the show.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good video. It's a pretty long video, so you talk about a lot of things related to Wi-Fi 6. And then David is asking you some, straight to the point questions. A lot of questions that people have in the industry right now. Mm-hmm. I've heard switch-like technologies and stuff like that. So it's a good video, and if you guys haven't had the chance to watch it, you should do it. And you can even just listen to it if you just don't necessarily want to watch the video itself. Just the audio is it's good as well.
Yeah, there's nothing particularly interesting about me watching. If you watch the video, I'm not doing anything in the background, but just talking with David. But it's just in video format. Video is pretty popular nowadays. So yes, you could listen to it in the background if you like.
Yeah, and you guys used some pretty good analogies to try to explain Wi-Fi 6 in a simple way. And I know it's not easy.
No, it wasn't easy for me, that's for sure. But David did a great job with the analogies. He's the one that came up with most of it.
All right. So other news for this week, Huawei. So Huawei is, it's kind of like in the center of the world right now. Whole bunch of things happening. And related to the Wi-Fi space, Huawei is temporarily pushed out of the Wi-Fi Alliance. So this is just the Wi-Fi Alliance complying with the U.S. Department of Commerce order. And so what they said in their release, press release, was the Wi-Fi Alliance is fully complying with the recent U.S. Department of Commerce order without revoking Huawei Technologies membership. Wi-Fi Alliance has temporarily restricted Huawei Technologies' participation in Wi-Fi Alliance activities covered by the order. So this is just another step in the Huawei drama. So I don't know, how it's going to go in the future. But for now, they don't have the right to use any Wi-Fi Alliance stickers, I guess, or certifications in their documentation. So we'll see.
And this is because of the, do you know why they did this and why the U.S. doesn't like these guys? I think it has to do with espionage or something.
Yeah, originally it's Huawei has been accused to spy on to spy on people using their equipment, their chipsets. And Huawei is very close to the Chinese government, so it's more of a geopolitical issue. And then the U.S., Huawei is not authorized in the U.S. I don't think you can purchase Huawei equipment. But it's Huawei is widely spread across the globe, in Asia and Europe, other part of the world. And so the U.S. Department of Commerce decided to stop any business between U.S. companies and Huawei. And this is a big deal for Huawei because they produce smartphones. On their smartphone, they have Android. So Android is the U.S. company owned by Google. So they won't be able to use Android anymore. And then they won't be able to use all the Google apps, all the American company apps and all of that. So it isolates Huawei a little bit from the rest of the world. So I don't truly know how it's going to play around. Huawei has planned for this to happen apparently, so they already have backup plans of maybe coming up with their own OS, coming up with their own suite of applications, emails and such. So we'll see how it goes for the Wi-Fi related questions. Huawei has also been banned from using chipsets from Qualcomm or other, Intel, other American companies. So that might be a bigger deal for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think they're also still part of the IEEE. I know I've seen their name or members of the company on some documents, but I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong.
Yeah, they probably have engineers working on IEEE, protocols or standards.
Okay. Well, we'll see how this pans out. They're always in the news, in the U.S. news.
I don't think IEEE is U.S. though. It's international.
No, it's
right?
international. Yeah, but I'm curious if they would ban them on any U.S. meetings. Like if they have the meetings here in
it's a very touchy subject and very political. So I'm not sure. I'm not really into those political drama. But
yeah, me either.
It's very serious. It's very serious. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. The next bit of news is SpaceX launched a 60 Starlink internet satellite into orbit. So what exactly is this, right? Elon Musk decided to launch, I think for themselves, internet out in space. Now, it's not anything different from what's already out there because there are internet satellites out there. It's just if anyone has used satellite internet, it's very slow, right? Because the latency is bad. It has to go up to space and come back down. I think it's pretty cool that Elon Musk actually documented this. He sent some pictures online of what that Starlink satellite looks like. And what's cool is they use their own rockets, so they're able to launch that into space and bring those rockets back down. And then, so I guess the real big difference here is what I looked at this article, quickly glanced at it from the New York Times. The satellites are going to orbit lower, so between 210 and 710 miles above the surface of the Earth. and that's what's supposed to reduce the latency. And so that they're saying that performance, because it's closer, the performance will be comparable to cable or optical fiber. So that'll be interesting to see, like, why they're putting out these internet satellites into space. Are they going to become now an ISP? I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. The biggest advantage of satellite communications is that you can pretty much cover any space, any areas in the world. So you can cover, the oceans. You can cover part of the world where it's harder to run fibers or cables. So that's a big advantage. And but like you said, the drawbacks was latency. But if they manage to get low latency and then high speeds, they could be dominant in part of the world where it's harder to get connected to the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be better than having no internet. And I think I've seen a lot of discussions even on wireless about, hey, having Wi-Fi is better than having no Wi-Fi, right? When it comes to trying to design for wireless. So in this case, we're doing internet out into the space in a lower orbit, and I think it's like the ultimate wireless, right? Because it's truly out there above the sky.
It's totally wireless.
But I wanted to add that in there because I thought it was interesting that I had no idea that Elon Musk was working on internet satellites.
Do you think he has like a long-term vision where he could provide internet in space for people who would just, take a trip to the space?
For
tourism? I'm not sure.
He's probably staging it all together, right?
Yeah.
As you're being launched into space to visit the moon, you'll have a full internet connection.
Exactly, yeah.
For the purpose of uploading to Instagram, right? Just to
Exactly. Well, Elon Musk, right? He has a big visions, right?
Yeah, he's a crazy guy, and he's running multiple companies. I had no clue that he would even have the time to think about creating an internet satellite.
Do you think Elon Musk is busier than you?
That guy doesn't sleep. I at least get 4 hours.
Oh, man. All right. So next news, CWNP, they're working on a new certification called Solution Administration, so CWSA. And their goal is to study, all the non-Wi-Fi technologies that we can find in enterprise environment. So BLE, cellular, Zigbee, the wired side technologies. I don't know exactly what that be. Maybe the layer 2 or layer 3 technologies, location services, APIs, project management. So I'm guessing it's everything you were expected to encounter as working as a Wi-Fi engineer. They want to have a certification program around it. We don't have much details about it yet. They just have one web page on their website, and we linked it in the show notes if you guys are interested in checking it out. And they're mentioning that the first class will be held in September 2019. I'm guessing for the Wi-Fi track. And what I found interesting on the webpage, they said that in the future, additional certifications will address key areas in greater depth, such as automation integration, IoT, private 5G. etc. So I'm guessing this is just the administration level, kind of like the CWNA. And then later on, they'll introduce professional certifications, deep diving into some of these subjects.
I think it's an interesting certification, being that it's only a solutions administrator. It sounds like this person would probably work more closely with clients or customers, and then work closely with an actual engineer in identifying what solutions that client needs. I think what the bigger section would be for the certification is probably the cellular portion, like the LTE, 5G, CBRS. That's probably the hotter topic. And then all the other supporting technologies like Zigbee, location services, and IoT. These are good topics to have. I guess it's a place where this is where you could put them versus where to put them within the existing certifications, because I don't know if these would exactly fit in CWNA. Although they briefly talk about some of these in CWNA, like Zigbee, Bluetooth low energy.
Yeah. And also, the part on API and automation, I found it very interesting as well.
Yeah, that'll be, I wonder how big that part will be. Being a solutions administrator, I don't think you'd be in depth in knowing API. I mean, someone who holds this could know a lot, but I don't think you're expected to know too much. It just says high level awareness.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we'll see, and then we will update you guys as soon as we know more about this new certification.
All right. And speaking of Instagram that I mentioned earlier, I decided to revive the Clear to Send Instagram account because we do have a lot of photos that you and I have taken, François, of the events that we've been to and some of the technology that we deal with. So I decided to start sharing those on Instagram. So if anyone wants to follow along, like behind the scenes and some of the tech that we come across, you could head over to instagram.com/clear2send and we'll post images there.
Yeah, some images of behind the scene, that would be fun. Where we are at the moment.
Yep. So that'll
where we're recording.
Where we're recording, the access wireless that we're working on, and some of the past photos from events that we're attending. So like Just a Tech, I started posting those photos that I took.
Talking about behind the scene, you want to know a fun fact?
Yeah, what's that?
I connected my Wi-Fi 6 AP at the Airbnb, so I get pretty good Wi-Fi here.
with your Samsung.
Yeah, I get to see the little 6 next to the Wi-Fi icon on my phone.
Oh,
that's all I need.
Yeah, that's the only thing you need, like high speed. You're probably rocking 80 megahertz channel with, right?
Shh, don't tell anyone.
All right, the last bit of news. It's related to the last episode. I did do a webinar with IBWave on how to design Wi-Fi for higher education. So if you guys want to check that out, just look at the last episode where I include everything there. So the slides, the audio version is there, and also the video version. So that's clear2send.net/171. All right, so now we can finally get into this episode on conference Wi-Fi. And I think, François, you're going to take the lead here because you recently did Wi-Fi at a pretty big conference in Toronto. Is that correct?
Yeah, last week actually they had a big IT conference in Toronto called Collision IT, and I helped the team to support the Wi-Fi during the event, and it was a pretty big conference, pretty exciting for us. And I just wanted to just talk a little bit about the experience, share it with you guys, and then talk about the key. The key information to remember if you want to do conference Wi-Fi, key information you need to know that will help you a little bit, guide you along the way, and then we can just exchange with Roel on the topic and see how we can improve the way we do things today. Maybe tomorrow or for the years to come, maybe we can find ways to improve, the way we do conference Wi-Fi today.
Yeah, and conference Wi-Fi is pretty common. If you've gone to any conference, there's always Wi-Fi somewhere, right? But there's always a set of challenges because conference Wi-Fi is not the same as your typical Wi-Fi at your office, or even when it gets to like high density. This is at a much larger scale. So, François, what are some of the challenges that you came across or that you noticed when you're doing the conference there in Toronto?
So the first thing is that conferences in general, they are very dynamic environments. So people will just go to different places. At the beginning of the day, you have no one in the building, and then at 12 noon, the building is full. So the fact that the people are moving around, it's very dynamic, but also the way the conference is organized, it's also very dynamic. You will get a lot of requests, ad hoc requests. Oh, can you set up a Wi-Fi for this company, for this booth? Can you set up something for them? And it can change from, it can change every day. Every day they have new requests. Some things are set in stone, but some of the things are very dynamic and exchange evolves. If a presenter is canceling because they missed their flight, that might change the schedule around, and then that might affect, different things on the network. So it's a very dynamic environment. Don't expect to plan for everything when you do conference Wi-Fi, because you'll get frustrated pretty fast. Just expect to have a lot of changes as you go during the event.
Yeah, so expect the unexpected.
Yeah, expect the unexpected. Yeah, exactly. And try to be open-minded about it, right? Because, like I said, you'll be frustrated very, very fast if you just think your initial solution is like the best, and you don't change it. Yeah, so that's one thing. One thing that's very important when you do conference Wi-Fi, it's that it's a very dynamic environment during the conference, but also in between different events, right? If you set up a Wi-Fi network from a convention center, depending on the type of event you're going to have, you're not necessarily going to have the same type of network in place. So it's also a very dynamic environment throughout the year. Yeah. Second thing is it's a very high density environment, right? When you reach the peak of the conference, you'll have a lot of devices on the network. So this is comparable to, stadiums or very high density environments. So you have to plan for that. You need to make sure that the infrastructure in place will support the high density of devices. It's easy to say it. It's just harder to implement and be ready for it. It's something that's harder to test as well before the event.
Yeah.
Except if you have a lot of friends.
if you can bring a couple thousand of your friends to test it out, to validate.
Yeah. So maybe we'll talk about that at the end. Maybe we can find some ways to test certain things. But to test the Wi-Fi piece, it's very hard to test the capacity unless... until the actual event itself. Something else is, you're going to have a lot of ad hoc requests throughout the event. So I talked a little bit about it. We'll talk more about it later on. But yes, you're going to have a lot of ad hoc requests. So you need to make sure you have some time to implement them, and you need to make sure that your setup or your infrastructure is flexible enough so you can implement those ad hoc requests. Rogue are a big deal in any high density environments. If you minimize the rogues, you'll just minimize the co-channel interference and optimize the RF. Mm-hmm. So that's actually something they did at the conference I was supporting. We had some people's pretty much hunting for the rogue APs and then asking people to turn them off.
Oh, really?
And they did a lot of communications prior to the event and during the event to tell everyone that, your personal Wi-Fi is not welcome here. Please make sure you disable it and all of that. So they did a lot of communications.
Okay.
And it actually worked.
Oh, it did work.
It did work to an extent. We'll talk about it a little bit after.
So those are people's access points they bring into their booths, or people's MiFi.
Yeah. People's MiFi, people bringing access point, exhibitors bringing their, the demo kit. I remember it was pretty much like a startup conference. So startups will just show up with their own demo or, MVP with their AP, and then, everything was kind of like configured and integrated around their own access point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a challenge, and but I'll go over it a little bit later on during the episode.
Okay.
And that's something else. Another challenge we have with the with the conference Wi-Fi is that expect the work environment to be very intense. Expect to work long hours and expect to have little sleep. So just to give you an idea, for the conference I attended, we pretty much worked 80 hours over 5 days.
Wow.
So we didn't sleep much. We had some issues. Probably we wouldn't have worked as hard if everything went smoothly, but still expect to work a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine you can only plan so much when it comes to a conference where you have no idea what's coming into the conference, right? Maybe the only idea is how many people registered, and then knowing that and trying to plan for that. So I guess that helps us transition to the planning portion, right? What kind of planning did you do or were you part of when it came to this conference? Because there could be thousands of people attending.
Yeah, so actually for this conference, they were expecting 25,000 people over the 4 days or 3 days.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of people. That's almost the size of like a Cisco Live. It's over 30,000. So
Yeah.
I would imagine it's pretty challenging. And I've seen Cisco do wireless for their conference, Cisco Live conference, which we'll see in a week or two. And definitely want to know, François, how you guys planned this out. So where do you begin?
Yeah, so the actual convention center pretty much redid the Wi-Fi, or pretty much redid the entire network, wired and wireless, to prepare for this event. So I wasn't fully part of the process. They involved me on the Wi-Fi piece of it, but they pretty much revamped the full network to prepare for this event. So what you need to do to prepare the conference is understand the type of event that's going to be, right? Is it going to be just like us, startups coming, very IT oriented, that are going to connect to the Wi-Fi a lot, or is it going to be just just like a show for farmers, and they're just going to bring their stuff to the conference, their cows and I'm not sure, but you know what I mean. Just try to understand what type of event and what type of people that will be attending, so it helps you to judge a little bit how they will use the Wi-Fi network. Also, the type of event will also drive the type of traffic that will be generated on the network, right? Mm-hmm. If it's like a sport event, a sport tournament, you'll have a lot of parents streaming the content, so you can expect a lot of upload. If it's just the conference that we organized last week, it was a little bit more download than upload. But you can try to see and try to plan for the type of traffic that would be generated on the network based on the type of the event.
Now, did the event the collision event, was there a specific application that was required to run during that event?
Yeah, a lot of them. For the attendees, they had like a phone application that they would use to follow the pretty much to follow the conference. They would have the schedule. They would be able to meet people on the application. They would be able to exchange contact information network using the application. So that was the main application used by the attendee, but it was the typical smartphone application. Apart from that, you have all the media. The media, they do a lot of video and image upload when they upload their documentations, and then they had like the TV broadcasters.
Okay, so these guys were then in different sections of the conference area, I assume. Like they typically push all those guys to one side of the conference. So talk about then the layout of what this conference looked like, because that's going to affect how the Wi-Fi design is. If they're redoing the Wi-Fi for this conference itself, then you need to understand where these booths are going to be, and also how the people are going to flow into the conference area.
Yeah, the layout is very important for the Wi-Fi piece of it, because depending on the layout, you will be able to plan where you will be placing your temporary access points. So the way the convention center was set up in Toronto is you had a set of access points under the ceiling with a very directional antenna facing down to be able to cover the full floor, the full hall, which just appears under the ceiling. So we use Cisco 3802s with stadium antennas for that. And then on top of that, we use temporary access point that we place throughout the floor to complement the over-the-head deployment. Mm-hmm. And then you will place those temporary access point based on the layout. Right, and the way we did it for the conference is we placed access point under the seat in the different stages, right? So they had different stages with 100, 200 people, 100, 200 chairs, I should say, around the podium. So we installed access point under the seats to provide Wi-Fi in those stages and make sure we handle the high density. And on top of that, we also had, tripods with access points and directional antennas that we use for different places wherever we needed to complement the coverage or complement the density.
Well, that's good to hear, because there's a lot of conferences where they don't use antennas or directional antennas. They tend to use just the omnidirectional built-in antennas, and typically that will lead to a disaster in a really high density conference because that signal just propagates all over the open floor.
Yeah, that doesn't work. It depends how big it is, right? But if it's a decent size, that's not going to work. Yeah. The omnidirectional antenna will just broadcast everywhere, and then your CCL will just be out of control.
And also those ceilings are typically much higher, usually like warehouse type ceilings, so usually over 25 feet. And sticking an omnidirectional up there, just if you're using something like RRM, that's going to basically ruin your design, because of the transmit power is going to be lowered, and then that's how the issues start ramping up.
Yeah, and you will not be able to support more than, I would say, 2,000, 3,000 devices if you have this type of designs. So it's way better to use directional antenna. If you've been to Cisco Live, they use directional antenna. They use the tripod as well.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys use tripods for when you were augmenting some of those areas?
Yeah.
Okay.
We use tripods and directional antennas to just shoot the signal where we wanted it to be. And then we would use, because it's on the floor level, we would use people and furniture to content the signal as much as we could.
Yeah, they act as attenuation for that signal as they're walking through parts of that conference
exactly
floor. Cool.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter if the access point is not installed in the more in an optimal way, I guess, because you don't hear what you want to achieve is capacity, right? You should have the coverage, but what you want to achieve is capacity. So what you're worried about is containing the signal so you can reuse the channel without having CCI.
Okay. Yeah. And that's so people can get the throughput they need to even check email. And we've seen where in conferences, there's too many devices on a single AP, so they've exhausted the airtime for, say, that channel or frequency. And that's where, again, you lead into more problems because it just usually wasn't designed properly.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we talk about monitoring. I'll talk about the channelization and all of that.
Okay, but when it comes to then knowing the amount of people, I'm sure the guys on the wired portion are going to ask you questions, right? They're probably asking you questions like, "Hey, what kind of throughput are we going to see?" So they can correctly size the wired side of things, because that's equally just as important. You can design a wireless network for thousands of people, but if your infrastructure, your backend infrastructure can't handle that, then that's kind of a wasted effort there.
Yeah, you have to plan for the LAN as much as you plan for the Wi-Fi piece of it. And so I'll come back to the LAN, but just before that, I want to finish on the layout.
Okay.
Because any big conference you organize, I guess, you have different areas in the layout that you have to pay close attention to. The first one is the registration area. So typically that's the first place that's going to be very busy on the first day or at the beginning of every day. If you've been to big conference, they have a big registration desk, and then you come, you get your badge, you get your goodies, and then you're good to go. You can enter in the actual conference, but that's where a lot of people stagger. If you come, if you're part of a big company and then you were not the one purchasing the ticket, you have to wait for the person that purchased your ticket. So you can have people staggering in little groups, and you can have a high density of devices here, or you have people downloading the app for the conference. So you could also expect a lot of traffic, in these registration areas. So make sure that you plan accordingly. Even if it means adding a couple of APs for just the time of the registration, a couple of APs that you just turn on when you have a lot of people, and then just turn them off when you don't have anyone at the registration desk. You could do something like that.
Yeah, just power down some of those radios.
Yeah, you can power down or turn it down. Power down is more efficient. If you see that you don't have any clients connected to it, you could do that. Second area that's gonna be important is the media area, especially because nowadays everything is social. So you want them to have a good experience. You want them to be able to work properly, right? So you want to make sure the media is working well. In our case, we added a couple of directional antenna in the media area, and we defined a specific SSID just for the media that they could use.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have the different stages, right? Stages, you could expect a lot of people. They had a lot of a lot of big names at the conference last week. So the Prime Minister came over. They had big startups or C-level people from different big companies.
Some celebrities too.
Yeah, you got some celebrities. They had some singers, producers at the event too. So you'll be expecting a lot of people attending these talks, and the stages were actually quite big. So make sure you plan for these areas as well. Make sure you can handle the capacity. You can handle the people connecting to the Wi-Fi, to the public Wi-Fi. So look at the layout and try to identify which area will be busy. And actually, if you can talk to the conference organizer, that's the best person to talk to, because they'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to know. They'll be able to tell you, hour per hour, where the people will be, where the people will flow in the layout, in the floor plan. So you can kind of play with that and then plan your configuration accordingly.
Now, did you set any channels dedicated to some of these people? So maybe the media had a certain channel that they're using, so that wasn't used on the show floor. Did you do anything like that?
No, for this conference, no, we didn't do it like that. So we had the same APs for the public Wi-Fi and the media guys, I guess. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we would do it if we needed to add an access point. We would just add just broadcast the SSID, that the private SSID that the people were asking for, and so they would be alone on their radio.
Okay.
Yeah. That's something you can do, if you want to make sure that you're only going to have, the media people or, a private company on one specific channel. You could do that if you want to.
Cool.
You just have to be careful on how you reuse your channels.
All right.
So let's go back to the LAN. So how do you prepare the LAN for such events?
Yeah, this is where most of the issues come.
Yeah. but it's always Wi-Fi, right?
Always looks like a Wi-Fi issue, but typically it's maybe 90% of the time DNS or DHCP.
Well, Wi-Fi is not, in high density environments, sometimes Wi-Fi sucks, right? But anyways, so for the LAN, make sure you size it properly so it can handle the number of devices that you expect to see. For the conference, we supported. The organizer told us that every people will have 2.5 devices in average. Remember, it was a very tech, focused conference. But that's the stats they had based on the download of their application and all of that. Mm-hmm. So an average of 2.5 devices per person. It doesn't mean everyone's going to connect to the Wi-Fi. That's actually not what we saw in the stats of the network. Not everyone connected to the Wi-Fi. Probably some people used cellulars to connect back to the internet. But make sure you size it properly. Talk to the organizer to see how many people and how many device you'll be expecting to see. And then make sure the basics are covered, right? What do I call the basics? DHCP, DNS, firewalling, core network, PoE budget. The more I troubleshoot Wi-Fi, the more I find DHCP and PoE issues, for instance. So just make sure you have the basics covered. Make sure the DHCP scope is large enough, or if you segment it, make sure you have enough. Make sure the lease is not too long for public Wi-Fi. Make sure the DNS is okay. If you implement DNS caching, make sure the server is sized properly.
And maybe have a couple of servers for each service, not just one DHCP server or one DNS server. Maybe have at least two or more, depending on the size of the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, make sure everything is redundant. Make sure your firewall are configured properly to handle all the sessions. Make sure you size it properly as well, right? Make sure the core network can support all the traffic you'll throw at it. Try to eliminate any single point of failure or any bottleneck. Mm-hmm. And then make sure you have enough PoE budget for your APs, and just try to remember that during the event you might connect additional APs for any ad hoc requests. So make sure you actually have way over what you actually need, because it will just serve you for during the event, prevent you to install a switch in the middle of the event. And then also prepare plan Bs or the alternative plans just in case something goes wrong, right? So before the event, once you have all your design and architecture in place, just ask yourself a couple of key questions. What do I do if the internet goes down, right? So try to plan for that. Maybe plan for a backup internet connection from a different provider. What do I do if my DHCP goes down? Maybe plan for an alternative solution. What do I do if my DNS goes down? So try to ask yourself those key questions before the event so you can plan for a quick fix solution just in case something wrong happen.
Okay.
Because if something wrong happen, you won't have a lot of time to respond, and a lot of people will depend on you.
Yeah, and not just the attendees, also the vendors that are there with booths, right? And those people are typically paying for internet, and they need, if they're relying on wireless, especially nowadays with the demos being wireless and all that, they'll need to convert some of these attendees to customers somehow, right? And that would be money loss for them.
Exactly. So just think about all these people that depend on your network and try to make it as resilient as you can. And then make sure you have enough internet bandwidth, right? Forget the megs, right? Forget the megs. Try to talk in gigs now, right? Try to have enough gigs of internet traffic to support all of this traffic.
And do you think it's possible to have two different ISPs coming in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could have two different depending on how you configure your firewalling. You could have different ISPs coming in. You could have one main ISP that you use and a backup one, or you could have how do you call it? Load balancing.
Yeah, or SD-WAN.
SD-WAN, yeah. So yeah, I'm not too strong on that, but you probably can set up some solutions to help you out for the internet access. But just make sure you plan for. I would say you don't want to run out of internet. I would say just try to overplan your internet bandwidth, so that's not something you have to worry about. And then, so that's for the LAN section, I guess. And then, how do you prepare for the Wi-Fi piece? So, key things you need to understand the limitation of AP placement, right? Where can I place APs? Most of the convention centers, they'll be empty one day, and then the next day for the conference, they'll be full of things. Boards on the wall, TV on the wall, a whole bunch of furniture in place. One day will be boats, another day will be cars, another day will be just booth. So try to work with the convention center, understand the limitation of AP placement, and try to understand where you have wired connectivity.
Okay.
Just in case you need to place temporary APs. In the case of the Toronto Convention Center, they had access to wires on the floor, right? So every 10 meters or so, they had access to wired cables, which was very convenient for us. We could just pretty much deploy an AP wherever we wanted to.
Yeah, that's important because it'll be more difficult to run once all that carpeting is in place and all the vendors are there. You won't be able to just simply run a cable because you also got to think about the safety of other people walking through. You don't want them tripping over any of those cables.
Yeah, so if you what we did is we put duct tape on top of the table on the cables to try to prevent that. But even if you put duct tape and you have thousands of people going through the event, so we had the occasional couple of APs going down every day because people would just trip on the wire or unplug it, or especially for the access point where you placed under the seats, people would just kick it and then unplug it. So that's going to happen for sure. That's just something you have to follow along during the event.
Okay.
Then what you can do is leverage the the APs you install under the ceiling, right? Make sure the RF is on point. You'll have time to test that. So what we did for the Toronto Convention Centers is we tweaked the RF to make sure that we had the proper cell size and the proper cell overlap using just the directional antenna we had placed under the ceiling. So we used that as our base. And throughout the entire facility, we had about a little under 100 access points covering the space. Okay. So that was our base, and then we worked around that whenever we needed to place temporary access points.
And what did you use to validate that, just for the people who want to know what kind of tools you're using?
We used EKH. We use EKH to measure signal, and then we leverage RM to handle the transmit power and the channels for us. And when I say we tweaked the RF, we pretty much tweaked RM we tweaked RM so it could give us what we wanted. Right.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll talk about. I'll ask you a few questions once we get to the configuration portion.
Okay. Yeah, so when you prepare the Wi-Fi, you have to think about that. And you also have to understand where you can place temporary access points, right? Based on the layout and then based on the access to the wired. Right? Like I said, can I place an access point here? Do I have access to the cable? You can also work with the facility to see if they can run a cable temporarily. We had an outstanding team of electricians in Toronto helping us to run cables when we needed to. And we had also another outstanding team that would just connect the cable for us, connect the APs, plate the APs on the floor. So that helped us a lot during the event. Pretty much the AP will just pop up in the controller and we just had to configure it.
There you go.
So yeah, So also plan to have AP ready to go to be deployed fast, right? So try to pre-stage as many APs as you can. So whenever you need something, you can just deploy it as soon as you can. Or you can have your tripods ready to go. If you need to deploy a tripod, you could have a tripod with the AP already on it, with the antenna already on it. Everything is already, physically installed. All you have to do is take it, place it where you want, connect it to the network, and wait for it to pop up on the controller, and then configure it.
Okay.
Make sure you size your controller properly, right? Understand how many APs you'll expect to be installing. Make sure you site it properly for the number of APs. Make sure you have enough AP license. Make sure that it can also support the tons of clients that you will accept on your Wi-Fi. Remember, conference Wi-Fi means there will be some public Wi-Fi, so everyone can connect to the Wi-Fi. So it means a lot of people will connect to the Wi-Fi. So make sure you size it properly.
Do you think cloud managed could fit easily in a conference setting?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think I would do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the controller, that's a traditional way of doing it, and you have a lot of control over how you do your RF and all that. So I can see why you would go with a controller.
I mean, for the Wi-Fi piece, maybe. The only thing is that you want enough control, and you want
you have a lot of fine tuning.
You want a lot of fine tuning, and also if something goes wrong, you want to be able to look at logs, SSH inboxes, make sure you understand what's going on, and it's just easier if you just have the controller on site. I'm not saying you cannot do it with the controller. I guess a cloud solution, but I would just trust a controller for those type of environments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
make sure you size the controller properly. And then when I said after that in the checklist, prepare the Wi-Fi, I said forget about 2.4. Right, 2.4 will not work, and plus you have a whole bunch of rogue APs. So just forget about 2.4. If you want to have a SSID, a 2.4 only SSID, just there for legacy devices, sure, you can do that. But forget 2.4. It will just become a best effort, and it will be saturated as soon as you have people in the space. So plan for the 5 gig.
I'm sure you didn't have anyone come up to you and go, "Hey, where's the 2.4 wireless?"
Yeah. No, I had people come to me asking me, the 2.4 is deployed, right? I'm like, you want to know for sure?
You only enabled 3 radios.
Yeah. So plan for 5 gig to work and put all of your effort on 5 gig. Yeah. And 2.4 will just pretty much be best effort for everyone. And then, 5 gig would be more important regardless, because at these events you will see a lot of AC clients. You will see a lot of AC clients. I think in our stats we're saying 90% of clients being AC.
Yeah, so 2.4 is not needed. You have plenty of 5 gigahertz channels to use.
Yeah, because I think it's, most of the time people coming to these conferences, they come with their iPad, their tablet, their phone, their laptops. And that's devices that they usually change regularly, every 2, 3, 4 years, maybe 5. Yeah. And so you can expect to have pretty, recent equipment.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I would see a lot of 2.4 devices, especially in a tech conference, is maybe these startups are using the IoT wireless, and they have cheaper radios, so they typically go for the 2.4 gigahertz only.
Yeah, exactly. So devices like that, maybe you could expect to see them, or any devices that's connected and part of something else than just the exhibitors and the visitors. Maybe it's part of the maintenance guys. Or part of the people handling the food, or anything like that. Specific devices that will only be 2.4.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So expect to see a lot of AC clients and then a few 11N devices. I don't think I saw any G devices. I didn't have time to to look too much, but I don't think I saw any.
You don't have time to look at old devices.
Yeah, exactly. And then stage as much equipment as you can ahead of time, right? So try to stage your APs as much as you can. Try to prepare your controller configurations as much as you can. We'll talk about that. So just in case, if you need something, you have it ready to go.
I think that part's highly important because prior to the event, you probably will be pre-staging these, like wherever your office is located, right? You want to test this out, configure everything. So when you get to the conference, all you're doing is typically the physical stuff, mounting them and tuning them. And that way you're not spending most of your time hours before the conference starting to do configuration, right? Your configuration from scratch. You're only then just fine tuning things. So that way it's meant for that environment versus, you just don't want to waste time.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can focus your time on fine tuning, monitoring, adjusting the settings according to how people move in the space. Yeah, you're right. And then you can organize the APs, name them properly, keep track of them in a document or application. So, when the guy takes the AP to connect it somewhere, you know exactly which AP he took, you know exactly where he connected it, which switch, so you can configure the port properly. You know exactly which name it's going to have in the controller. It just makes it easier. For our event, we had a Google Sheet that we shared between the different teams that we used to do that. So that's, that works that way. But if you have time to develop your own application, web app, simple web application to handle that tracking, you can do that as well. And then you can tweak the RF of the under ceiling APs as much as you can before the event. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So we spent some times to tweak the RF so we could have exactly what we wanted for the APs, the permanent APs. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's related to preparing the Wi-Fi side of things. Now, if we talk about configuration, the configuration of the Wi-Fi. So for the public Wi-Fi, I would just advise you guys to just keep it as simple as possible. If you can just have it with no captive portal, that's the best. That's the best.
The best way to do it, yeah. Get people on easily. What about throttling? Do you do any throttling on the public Wi-Fi?
So we didn't do any throttling here. We just let the RF throttle itself, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it worked pretty well, depending on how many people were connected to or were sharing a channel. We could get different data rates, but it worked pretty well for us without throttling. We had a lot of internet connection. We had 10 gigs. So we didn't have any limitations on the internet bandwidth, so we could afford to not throttle.
All right, that sounds pretty good.
So keep it as simple as possible for the public. I know sometimes you need for regulations you're gonna need a captive portal, but even if you have a captive portal, try to keep it as simple as possible. Just make sure you size the captive portal server accordingly, and make sure it doesn't take a minute for the captive portal to show up when everyone is just arriving at the conference.
Okay.
Just another piece you have to think about if you have a captive portal. For the private Wi-Fi, so depending on what conference you're supporting or what type of application they'll be using on the Wi-Fi, you might have some private Wi-Fi networks you need to handle. So for those private networks, try to see what you need. I would keep it as simple as possible once again, and then understand if you need to configure QoS or not. I worked for a conference one day where every transaction were happening over the Wi-Fi, so they had the necessity to connect their point of sales, and then any transactions between the exhibitors and the visitors were happening over the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi was critical, and then at the end of the day, they would list, they would state how many transactions and how much dollar they made during the day over the Wi-Fi.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Wi-Fi becomes even more critical in these situations, because if it goes down, it's millions of dollars that get lost during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so try to understand this public Wi-Fi's, and if you can test it ahead of time, that's even better. And then try to create AP groups, RF profiles as much as you can, so it's very flexible during the event, and you can adjust settings, AP groups per AP groups, but small AP groups per small AP groups, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So if you need to adjust something just for the AP, in stage 1, you can just do that without impacting all the other stages. And it gives you a lot of flexibility during the event when you need to adjust configurations.
I think that's a great way to utilize AP groups within a conference setting, especially when you're doing different stages, because then now you're not affecting the whole conference area, right? You're not going to create some sort of issue where maybe some of the APs have to reboot. You're not rebooting all of the APs because they're all in the default AP group.
Exactly. And then so that's what we did for the event. We had AP groups per stages. We had AP groups for like the media area. They also had like a VIP area. We had an AP group for that. We had AP group for registration, AP group for big halls, AP group for, the concourse area, AP group for SSID they call stages that they use for presenters, if presenters needed to connect to the Wi-Fi for some reason. So yeah, just to try to be as granular as you can. Talk to the organizer to understand their need, and then don't hesitate to create AP groups and organize and segment your APs, I guess. It will just help you.
What about using RF profiles? How did you guys use that?
Yeah, so we use pretty much per AP group, we had RF profiles, so we could change the RF characteristic of each group individually. So, yeah, one thing I did for the stages during the event is I would just, turn the power down when no one was at the stage. And then when everyone would be sitting on the chairs in the stage, I would turn the power up to make sure everyone would have the coverage, and I would use the body to content the signal.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could do some stuff like that. Or you could turn on and off SSIDs for different periods of the day if you need to do that. You could do that with AP groups as well.
How about your channel planning? When it comes to configuration, are you more of at the conference a static or dynamic channel planner?
So for the conference, for the channel, so try to use, first of all, try to use all the channels you can, right? Even DFS, even 165, even 144. I mean, even if the device doesn't support it, you have enough APs that the device will find another AP to connect to, right? So just try to use all the channels you can, so you can have the best capacity as you can. And then, related to the, the RMTCA versus static plan, in the conference we did, we went the DCA, so the ORM way. And I would I went static a couple times. When I would add temporary access points, I would just study which the channel would make more sense for the temporary access points. But for the most of it, we used the DCA, and we relied on that to do the channel planning for us. So we went hybrid, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a very dynamic environment. So static could work as long as you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and you probably would have to be monitoring it much more closely and then having to make those static changes when you need to. Whereas with RRM, you can have that, make the changes on the fly without you even looking at it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, so we went RRM, and like I said, we tweaked RRM for some of the access points, some of the, depending on the antenna we would use. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just do your homework with RM before the event. Try to fine tune and find out which settings would work for you, and then you could use RM and you could tweak it as you go if you need to, increase the power, decrease the power.
What about some of the like what I'd consider like your non-standard configuration? Right, there's some advanced feature sets within a Cisco controller like RxSOP and some other features that maybe you can tell us if you've used those.
Yeah, so for this event, we didn't have time to dig into it because we got big issues that we had to work on. So this we didn't have time to work on it, but hopefully next year we have time to dig more into it.
Hopefully they weren't wireless issues.
No, but still impacted the Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we had issues on some of our switches, so that impacted the Wi-Fi. But so we didn't have time to look at these advanced features. But hopefully next year we can do it and look at things like prop suppression, RxOP, airtime fairness, all these advanced features that could allow you to provide a better experience for the client devices, right? Give them better SNR. Mm-hmm. But in order to use these techniques, you have to do some testing prior to the event, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so now I want to know a little bit more details about how the conference turned out, how many devices and the statistics you were able to get out of this. So we're getting into more of the monitoring portion of the conference, right? So are you able to provide some of those details to us?
Yeah, I can talk about a few things. So monitoring. So during the event, you're going to do a lot of monitoring. So you're going to make sure that the infrastructure is supporting the devices. You're going to look at the curves, right? The curve going up during the day, that during the mornings. That's always the question: where is it going to stop? Where is it going to plateau? And at one point during the day, it plateaus, and then in the afternoon it goes back down. And that's kind of like what the curve of number of clients looks like. Same for the traffic generated. So you monitor that. You make sure you still have good experience over the network as you welcome more and more devices. So what we would do in the NOC, we would just have one laptop connected to the public Wi-Fi running some test. We would have another one connected to more of the private or critical Wi-Fi, doing some test, and then we would just monitor the wired network as well to make sure everything was going well. And if something would go wrong, we'd just try to act upon it and see if we could fix the issue. So for the event, we went up to about 7,000. I would say 7,000 clients, concurrent clients, on the network. But once again, we had some issues, so maybe we would have had more clients on the network if we didn't have the issues we had. So we'll see. I guess we'll see the next time around. But that's pretty much the number of clients we had. And in terms of traffic generated, I think we were like close to 1 gig on the internet uplink. We had more download than uploads. So that's kind of like what you do when you monitor the event. What we would do as well when monitoring the event was looking at where the people were, right? People are at the registration. Okay, so we monitor the APs at the registration. Are we saturated? Are we okay? If we saturated, we might, turn on an access point, a local access point, just for the time being. Yeah, or we just monitor the RF side of things as well to make sure we have enough to support the capacity.
And how are you guys monitoring that? Like you notice that there are a lot of people in registration. Is that just a physical look with the eyes, or are you seeing on your monitoring, we're seeing a lot of clients on this set of APs in this AP group?
So we used Cisco Prime and the Cisco controller dashboard to do that. So we just look at the busiest APs and look at how well there was the number of clients per APs and then the channel utilization. So we didn't have cameras in the NOC, but hopefully that's something you can do to help yourself. Have screens in the NOC showing you different angles of the convention center, so you can have a look, a visual on the registration area, a visual on the different halls, different stages, so you can know if it's actually busy or not.
And how many SSIDs did you end up having total throughout the conference floor?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say because you have a lot of changes, and you don't broadcast all the SSIDs in different, on all APs. So maybe we had maybe 15 SSIDs configured, and also some companies they pay more money to have their private SSID, right?
Yeah.
So we have to configure that as well.
Yeah,
but you only configure that, for their booth. So.
Yeah, so you can put that on a specific AP, and that's a very common request for even any kind of event Wi-Fi is people wanting their own SSIDs, your operations having their own SSID. You just got to control that with like AP groups and RF profiles and things like that. But you want to try to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah, and these requests, they might come during the first day or second day. Like the conference organizer will come to you and say, oh, this company just paid to have their free SSID. Their private SSID. Can you set it up for them? Right? And then, so you have to set it up for them. Right? So you have to handle those requests as they come as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. How about the number of rogues? Like, how many did you see, and how did you handle those?
So the conference, they did a lot of communications around Rogue AP. So prior to the event, they sent emails and notifications to everyone telling them that, private Wi-Fi will not be allowed in the conference center. And then what they did is they had a team of volunteers roaming around using air checks to hunt for the rogue APs. And then they would just talk to the people, explaining them that, this could impact the overall Wi-Fi experience for everyone. So it's better if they just turn it off, and they will try to understand, their needs. Why do you need a private Wi-Fi? Can we work something for you? Can we find another solution? Not impacting
pretty
the
much
Wi-Fi?
Try to help them out, right? Like what is the purpose of you using this versus the conference Wi-Fi, and try to understand what their challenges are or what their needs are.
Exactly. So you try to help them out and try to find solutions, whether it's running a cable, a wired connection, or setting up a network that you can manage yourself. So we actually had one request where a company was doing augmented reality, and they had their headset connected to Asus access point.
Right. Yeah.
And they had like a server that would handle all the AR stuff. So they needed a server to be connected.
Too?
That was on site too. So what we did is we worked with them. We configured an access point, Cisco access point with Mobility Express. We converted an AP to Mobility Express, and then we configured it on the channel. The optimized channel for the area, and then we configured with a lower transmit power. And when we transferred their servers to the AP, and then so they could be operational, minimizing the impact on the rest of the conference floor. So you could find solutions like that for some of the rogue issues you'll see.
That's
going
pretty
back to
good service.
Yeah, well, that's the type of stuff you could be expecting to do during the conference. So maybe you could prepare that in advance. Have a couple of access points in autonomous, or Mobility Express Instant, whatever your vendor call it, ready to go if you ever need to deploy it.
Okay.
And then in terms of number of rogues, the guys were very efficient on the floor. So we would go, the numbers I would have would be like sub 500 rogues, which is very good for these environments. Yeah.
And I'm assuming they use Cisco Prime to figure out where these are, and then sent out your volunteers to look for them.
Not even, because Cisco Prime was a starting point, but it's not precise enough. So they would go with the AirCheck G2 or the AirCheck and their directional antenna, and they would use that to hunt the the AP. And then what we did as well is they had specific areas where they had a small startup booth, and they were expecting a lot of people. So in the morning, I would just do a quick Ekahau survey in those startup booth areas, and then doing a report of the rogues that I've detected and sent that to them. And they could use that as a starting point to hunt down the rogue APs. And then we focused on 5 gigahertz. Because if you look at the 2.4 rogue APs, you just lose your mind. Yeah.
All right. So how about the tools and applications that you used during this event? Which ones helped out in with the Wi-Fi and also with troubleshooting?
So I used Ekahau with the Sidekick and the iPad, going on the floor, doing some surveys. I wish I could have done more, but we got busy on other stuff. But yeah, it's a really good way to find out how everything is going and find out how busy it is. I would, whenever we had big issues, I would also go on the floor with the Sidekick and look at the spectrum, try to see how busy it is, and try to see how I could improve it. So the Sidekick and Ekahau was actually my go-to tool whenever I needed to troubleshoot something. We use the air checks. Air checks are great because it's easy to train someone on how to use them, right? So if you have a team of people that are here, sometimes they have volunteers or they hire students for these type of conferences. So you could just show them how to use it, and then they just go on the floor and hunt rogue APs or troubleshoot easy things.
It's a small tool, and it's very intuitive to use. So training somebody on that is very simple.
Yeah. It's also when you're on the floor with the air check, it's not as obvious as, the Sidekick and the whole kit, right? So yeah, it's a little less obtrusive than the Sidekick and the laptop or the iPad. Then you could use Wi-Fi scanners, like Wi-Fi Explorer, or Insiders, whichever one you prefer on Windows. You can use that to do some simple troubleshooting as well. You're gonna need a lot of screens in the NOC, right? If you want to be able to monitor all of your different equipment. Yeah. So like I mentioned, we had the laptop connected to the guest Wi-Fi. We had the laptop connected to the private Wi-Fi, and we had all of that running test at the same time. We had screens for the controller, prime, firewall. The more screen you have, the better it is. If you have, if you can get feeds from cameras, security cameras, to see where the people are going, it's even better as well. The more screen, the better. If you want to have like a big whiteboard or a big TV where you connect an iPad or something to do some sketch, to do to run some ideas, you can have that as well. It's useful when you have to find a solution fast, and when you have an issue and you need to find a solution fast. So everyone can just brainstorm around the white paper. And then you can use your favorite terminal application if you need to do SSH or troubleshooting or tests or anything. I found my new favorite application during the event, iTerm2. One of the engineers introduced that application to me. It's awesome.
I'm surprised you didn't even know about that one.
I know. I was surprised too, but I was using just a macOS terminal application. But iTerm2 is actually
it's so different. And one of my favorite features about iTerm2 is if you're configuring multiple devices, and let's say you need to do the same configuration on multiple devices, you can SSH to each one and then have your input be applied to each window or pane or tab.
What?
And that way you don't have to go into each device and put in the same commands.
That's awesome. Okay, well, you need to train me on iTerm2.
So if you have two controllers and you're configuring the same thing, like WLANs or something, you can just do the same input to both controllers.
That's awesome. All right, so iTerm2 I started to use that during the event, and then use your favorite network diagnosis tool. So I also discovered MTR during the event, which is like a mix of a ping and trace route. It gives you in real time, the latency of your different hops. So we actually use that a lot to monitor the Wi-Fi, and also whenever we had like a ad hoc request, like, can you make sure my streams will go to ustream.tv? We'll just make sure we had good latency and stuff like that. So
yeah, you could definitely see like the path traffic is taking, where latency is getting hit the highest. So if you're, like you said, troubleshooting, that's a great tool. I use that all the time as well.
Yeah, you'll see where your bottleneck is, and you'll see who's dropping packets and stuff like that.
All
right, so that's some of the tools I used, and my laptop too. My laptop, iPads. If you have multiple laptops, just bring multiple laptops. Someone will use it.
Yeah, it's better to have more tools at this event, right?
Yeah.
So what are your closing remarks here? You've done this event. What are some things you do differently, or maybe you have other ideas about how to run it better?
Yeah, so I found myself, always using the same commands to check, to configure my temporary APs, or to check if my APs would come up. So I think I can improve that. I think maybe some I can automate some of it. So maybe create some scripts to automate the onboarding of temporary APs. Maybe also, like, I found myself using the same command line to do some monitoring, and some of the things that Cisco Prime would give me would not fully meet what I wanted to see myself. So I was thinking maybe create like a monitoring dashboard, like a custom monitoring dashboard showing exactly what I would want to see. I was also thinking maybe, for the rogue detection, maybe automate that as well. Maybe create a script that would just pick up, the 5 gig rogue APs, try to prioritize them according to the number of clients they have connected to it, and then send that automatically to like an email list. They actually set up an email during the event that they called Rogue Wi-Fi. And so we could just, try to automate that, so the information could just be updated every hour or so and sent to everyone. And maybe a better way to track APs, right? When someone is plugging an AP somewhere, maybe have a simple application, a better way to track it, so it's not as much manual work as we did updating the spreadsheet and all of that. So, yeah, maybe I can get more Python skills before the next time around, the next conference I support, and I can develop my own tools to help me out, and make it faster. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at being more efficient with a conference event like this, and even in any other type of environment. And I think automating a lot of this is going to be probably the best approach, because there's so much that needs to be configured, so much that needs to be tested, so you can automate all that, right? Your configuration, your testing, portions of your validation, especially when it comes to making sure if SSIDs are working, or certain paths out to the internet are working. I think, that's a good way of looking at how to better support these events, and looking forward what some of the what could be built into some of these solutions.
Yeah, and overall, at the end of the event, I was happy on how the Wi-Fi was doing. We actually supported, quite a lot of people without having a big trouble. We did have, high channel utilization, which is expected to happen in those environments. But people were still being able to have, sufficient bandwidth to support whatever they were doing on the Wi-Fi. I was doing some random checks, voice over IP call on the show floor during the event, just to make sure I could still, have a decent experience on the Wi-Fi. So I was happy with the Wi-Fi overall. And
yeah, it's awesome that you're doing these active tests, and that's what we want to see, or that's what we want to do in order to provide this service to everybody in the conference.
Yeah, it was really good. The fact that we installed access point under the seats in the stages helped us a lot to support the stages. We had no issue whatsoever with the stages. You could do a speed test and have 50 meg even if the stages was full.
Wow.
Actually, the first day they had the Prime Minister over for a talk, and I was just there when he came on stage, and everyone was uploading videos to Instagram, and I did a speed test, and I got like 50-60 megs. So
nice.
So
cool.
It actually worked pretty well.
Right.
So as a closing remarks, I would just say that, during these events, you just need to stay sharp, because it's a very dynamic environment. You have to think outside of the box sometimes to find solutions. So try to not be close-minded. Try to open yourself to what other people are saying. Even if those people are not technical, they might have good idea that you haven't thought about. So you have to take, fast decisions. So just use your best judgment, and rely on your technical knowledge to do so, and then just do the best you can.
All right. Thank you, François, for sharing your knowledge of doing Wi-Fi for this collision conference that was over in Toronto. It sounded like it was a good event despite some issues that were non-Wi-Fi related. So it looks like you handled the Wi-Fi pretty well. And if any of you guys are listening here and want to see the links that we've talked about, some of the resources and some of the descriptions about this the conference that François was managing for wireless, head over to the show notes. That's cleartosend.net/172, and we'll have everything there talking about the conference itself, and also a list of the tools that François listed, just in case you don't have those and you want to check it out yourself. Anything else you want to close out with, François?
No, I just I added a link in the show notes related to an article that Christian Roberts wrote on how to his experience removing captive portals. So if you're interested in reading it, if you're interested in removing your captive portals, or if you're having some hurdles doing so, you can read his article and see how he handled it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll link out to that in the show notes. And if there's anything else, if anyone wants to comment or has any questions, reach out to us on Twitter @ClearToSend, or shoot us an email. You can reach us online, even through our contact form. So once again, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you guys. Have a good week.
Bye.